hardwood down in these bedrooms, but before I do that, I'm going to prep the floor. I've removed the carpet. I'll be scraping it down so that any staples and loose pieces of foam underlay are all removed, because you want your hardwood to go down nice and level. And the next thing I do is I screw down the subfloor. That is going to eliminate all the squeaks that are present in this old house. So the first thing I do is we have to find the floor joists. So I've already found one along this line, and I know that they're 16 inches apart. So you just measure 16 inches over, draw a line. So in order to get the line straight, you just mark it on this side and also on the opposite side of the room. And just take my laser level, turn that on, and I just line the laser up with this line here and the mark on the other side. And it's just a matter of screwing down along that line. So to save my back, I use an extension on my drill. It's just a matter of jabbing it in, drilling down. Do this about every foot or so. You know you've hit a stud if the screw bites in. If you get to the end of the screw and it just keeps turning without biting in, you know you've missed the stud. You want to make sure that the head of the screw is below the surface of the subfloor, otherwise your hardwood won't lie flat. So there we are, no more squeaks. You just want to go throughout the room and kind of test it out. Make sure there's no squeaky spots. If there are, just screw that area down a little more. So next is to lay the hardwood. Now this is solid hardwood, and like I say, every time you're building something, you want to make sure one layer reinforces the next. So in this house, we've got our floor joists going this way, so we're going to span those with the floorboards, which will go 90 degrees to the floor joist. Another reason we do this is that if you actually put these floorboards running parallel to the floor joists, you're going to get a ripple effect in your floor. Because in between the floor joists, the floor is slightly softer. It's just 5/8 inch plywood here with a 1/4 inch underlay. So you'll actually get a wave effect in your hardwood. But if it's bridged like this, you can avoid that. So we start with one wall here. This is the far wall, an exterior wall, and we're going to be working this way. I've got a hallway and 2 more rooms that this hardwood is going to flow into. One reason I'm starting on this side, it's easier to go from 1 room into 2 than from 2 into 1. Because where those 2 rooms meet in the hallway, the hardwood would have to reach the doorway of those rooms exactly spaced. As you go along, there's going to be differences in spacing. So going from 1 room into 2 is much easier than going from 2 into 1. We're about to lay our first piece of hardwood, so let's see what's going on here. I've got the hardwood pre-cut to fit around the door there. And you can see that I've actually undercut the trim here and here, so the hardwood's going to slide underneath there. Then we'll get a nice clean fit. It's easier to undercut the trim than it is to try to notch fancy patterns around the edges of your hardwood there to fit the trim. Another thing we're doing is we're going to leave a gap between the wall and the hardwood, about a 1/4 inch. That allows for seasonal expansion of the hardwood when it gets humid out. If you don't leave that gap, what's going to happen is your hardwood is going to have nowhere to go when it expands, so it's actually going to tilt upwards, usually somewhere in the middle of the floor. So you'll have a unsightly has this bump in the middle of your floor, so hence the gap. I've got some shims in there temporarily to make the gap, and I'll take those out afterwards. You can see here how the hardwood kind of neatly goes underneath the trim there. I'm leaving a little bit of a gap between the door jamb and the hardwood to allow for expansion, and afterwards I'll put a bit of caulking in there just to fill that gap. So the first few pieces, actually the first piece against the wall here, let's put some finishing nails just along the edge of the board, and those will actually get hidden by the baseboard when that goes on. I'm also constantly sweeping both on the surface of the new floor that I put down and also on the subfloor in front of it. That way I'm not going to scratch the new finish with any stones or anything from my shoes. And also I'm making sure that no grit is getting underneath the new floor, which may create a crunching sound whenever you walk on it in the future. So keeping your workplace clean is crucial to a good installation. So one of the things we want to avoid when installing hardwood is creating patterns in the board links. So by patterns I would mean things, you know, like stairs where you'd have a line, a line, a line in a stair pattern like that. And that generally looks pretty bad. Another thing would be a regular pattern of, you know, a line here, a space, a line, a space, a line, a space, and so on in a perfect pattern. So what we're doing here is we're making the board links basically random. Another thing we avoid is getting the joins too close to the next one. So for instance, you can see right here, we've got a join there, and the next join is over here. The minimum space I'd put between a join is basically one board width. So that much, that'd be my minimum. So here's a heat vent. One thing you notice that there's no seams or the boards join around the perimeter of the register itself. The only places where there's any seams is right here, where it's basically unavoidable. And you just cut these out with your either table saw or your circular saw, plus your miter saw for these ones here. It's easy to do and it looks pretty good. Once the heat register's on, you don't even notice that it's there. And also, if you're testing for squeaks, get your little kitty out, have him walk around the floor, and make sure there's no squeaks in the floor. If you've got pets at home, make sure they're specially trained to avoid any dangerous areas in the construction zone. See this kitty, he's pretty careful not to step on nails and screws and things like that.